Verily, this vichyssoise of verbiage veers most verbose, so let me simply add that it's my very good honor to meet you, and you may call me V.
Are you like a crazy person?
I'm quite sure they will say so.
V for Vendetta is a story with real depth. It's angry, it's difficult, and it has a unique political commitment. When I say that, though, I only mean the original, the comic book by Alan Moore and David Lloyd. The film adaptation that you're probably more familiar with wears its skin, pretends to have a lot to say, but basically abandons the entire premise of its source. It castrates it to make it an easier watch, and consciously shrinks its purpose. But before we get into that, let's just talk about the comic for a bit. I want to give you some context on its world, characters, and politics before we get to the movie. The comic version is about a future Britain that's been overtaken by a brutal, fascist dictatorship called Northfire after a global nuclear war. An anarchistic terrorist calling himself V, clad in a Guy Fawkes mask, labors to destroy society, radicalize its craven populace, and topple the concept of the state. This story is explicitly about this society, about how it came to be, how it's maintained, and where its weaknesses are. I'm not reading fascism into the text. It's meticulously built something that's specifically fascist. The state's organized into anatomical bureaus. There's the eye and the ear, constant visual and audio surveillance of every citizen in public and private life 100% of the time. The mouth, total control of public broadcasting through Northfire television to spread propaganda and ensure no opposing voices exist. The finger, a brutal secret police that disappears dissidents and abuses citizens. And the nose, the investigative and intelligence agency that keeps the peace, roots out any danger to the regime. Everything is controlled through the supreme leader, Adam Susan, and his supercomputer, Fate. Northfire used the disarray of global war to seize total power, and used these apparatuses to cleanse the country of racial and ideological undesirables. All racial minorities, homosexuals, and political opponents were arrested, sent to concentration camps, and executed years ago. It's all deeply, disgustingly evil, and the pathetic, bickering careerism of the party faithful is a heavy focus of the book, showing the government here is terrifying, but also banal and ultimately weak. The way this society has continued is through complacency and fear. The public has given away their freedom to keep chaos away. That's what we do, sometimes meekly and sometimes actively, accept things as they are. There's a section that talks about the Milgram experiment, which is a real thing, where people were told to administer shocks to actors who scream and beg them to stop louder and louder. 80% continued after they were begged to stop, and 60% continued even after the screams went silent. The book's philosophy on the public is made pretty clear in this passage. They were ordinary people, and they were prepared to torture a stranger to death, just because they were told to by someone in authority. Some of them said they'd even enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed what I did at the time. People are stupid and evil. There's something wrong with us, some hideous flaw. We deserve to be culled. We deserve it. Keeping power, though, does require a little more than just preying on our nature. People are kept in line out of a love for order and terror of the prospect of punishment, but also through an enforced economic desperation that naturally stifles dissent. The comic is really good at highlighting how warped and dark this place is, but how normally everyone treats it. This stripper who sings about how turned on she is by Nazis is particularly uncanny. David Lloyd's heavy, detailed artwork contributes to its boring, sinister wrongness. The colors are dull, the shadows deep, the setting and anatomy realistic. It's oppressive and makes everything believable. V indicts the endorsement and participation of the public, and makes the reader culpable too, since this isn't just a criticism of fascism, but of democracy as a natural precursor to it, of fascism as a collective choice that a society made and continues to make every day. V's an interesting and unique character here. He's painted as a terrorist and extremist, and he is one. But through the lens of this fascist state, those labels don't carry the implications we're used to. He wears his evocative costume for a lot of reasons. It showcases a mocking, uncanny grin, which never changes no matter how much violence occurs. It's a constant reference to Guy Fawkes, a political terrorist of the past with his own complicated history. It juxtaposes the boring, cruel grayness of the regime, one which has banned all arts and erased history, against his theatrical, vaudevillian flair. But most of all, it removes the concept of V as a man. He's not attempting to be a superhero or the leader of a movement, it's the complete opposite. He wants to embody the idea of revolution. His personhood is meaningless. He's the natural response and reaction to the extremism of Northfire, his entire purpose being to dismantle the concepts of authority and leadership. His philosophy is specifically anarchistic. I learned from this book that anarchy and chaos are not actually the same thing. While chaos is definitionally disorder, confusion, a disorganized mass, anarchy is a system, just one with no leaders, where the people choose order voluntarily. V calls it the land of do as you please. It's the ultimate distillation of the concept of freedom. That's what V fights for, and that's what he hopes the people replace this failure with. Now, I do support democracy. I'm not an anarchist. Any political system considered romantically looks great in theory, but has holes and the potential to fail in practice. But the book does a really good job of presenting a freshly romantic political ideal. A freedom fighter who truly does fight for the ultimate form of freedom, for the right of everyone to collectively choose everything with no one at the top, is compelling and original, and works great as the polar opposite of this oppressive dictatorship, where every aspect of every person's life is meticulously controlled, and every choice is stifled. It's refreshing to see a unique political dream, instead of the masturbatory, self-satisfied image of democracy that's constantly shoved down our throats in media. But it's not just his politics. The concept of V is different and fun to read about. He comes off ghostly and non-real. His word balloons are wavy and singular. He does things that don't make any physical sense and is insanely poetic and capable. This allows him to act as a believable opponent to the regime, but also makes him feel like more than a human being. We never find out who he actually is. He has no name or face, and any emotions or connections he feels are only tied to his goals, his hatred and vengeance against the government, and his push to make sure his status as an idea radicalizes people, extends into others. In that, he's a bit scary, and is clearly intended to be. But in this story, with the brutality of this regime, he's painted as mostly justified. He was an inmate in a concentration camp called Lark Hill that underwent a biochemical trial. All other subjects died painfully and horribly, and he alone escaped, disfigured beyond recognition. The first portion of the book covers his revenge tour, as he viciously murders everyone involved in the camp torture. The detective in charge of the case treats his job as an investigator defending a fascist dictatorship as a boring 9-to-5, just a standard job. He's shocked by V's mass murder of the party faithful, and casts his terroristic actions as those of an amoral monster. He also praises his friend and lover, a doctor who looks after sick children, as a woman of intense character and empathy, despite the fact that she willingly helped systematically torture and exterminate the inmates of Lark Hill for having the wrong skin color or holding the wrong views. It's an interesting flipping of the terms we're used to. The purveyors of order speak of defending their society from a violent criminal, but the point is that this society isn't worth protecting just because it's calm. V being a violent terrorist does not make him a villain, and the bureaucrats aren't the good guys just because they're keeping the peace. That flipping of the rules is why it's so important that the comic shows us this society in extreme depth, so we understand it, grow to hate and be disgusted by it, and learn to accept extremity in response to it. Detective Finch's plotline is about him realizing that too. There can be no redemption for you if you participate in this. No acceptance of this can be forgiven. It's not the institutions or the law, it's the acceptance that's to blame. Justice here is portrayed as useless. V accuses the concept of cheating on him, since it's so easily wielded by whoever's in power that at its core, it's meaningless. He as a character exists in opposition to Adam Susan, who's deeply in love with fate, both the computer he uses to maintain his grip and the concept which he believes he's naturally moving through, though it cheats on him as V's rebellion starts to gain momentum. Our major normal character in the story is Evie Hammond, a 16-year-old prostitute that V takes in and spends the book radicalizing. She might start the story thinking of him as her protector, but she'll come to know that that isn't what he is. He's not a man or a hero, but a political will that needs her to see things as he does. She represents those of us who wish things were different. Meek, beaten down, wants change but is too blinded and incapable to know what it looks like or how to make it happen. Her parents were political dissidents, have been dead for years. She has nothing and no one when V takes her in, and is delighted by his vast collections of art and the paternal kindness he shows her. When she joins in his rebellion, she quickly realizes V's methods are overtly terroristic, implicate her in murder, and she recoils in moral outrage. She wants to help him, but doesn't want to be party to something like that, and begs him not to make her participate in killings. He responds by shoving her back out into Norse fire. He watches her find a lover, watches him get viciously murdered, and then he kidnaps her, pretending to be the nose. He spends an indeterminate amount of time torturing her. Lloyd's artwork shows her degradation from porcelain and healthy to shriveled and emaciated. This is done until she learns to believe completely in the mission. The story of Valerie, a lesbian victim of the camps, teaches her to understand that if you covet your integrity and don't fear death, the terror and comfort of fascism have no power over you, and you don't need a leader. V personally guides her through the end of her transformation, molding her into his own image. Valerie's story radicalized V himself during his own stay in a cell a long time ago. He makes her realize that this society she lives in is the real cell, that happiness is the cell. It keeps her docile and obedient, entrenches things the way they are with the lie that they're natural. He forces her to understand that it's not okay to just be passive and normal in this place, and she becomes his first disciple. He brutally indoctrinates her, and she thanks him for it. It's a deeply uncomfortable section to read. V isn't a hero. We see him as willing to outright torture someone he claims to care about for the good of the mission. With the backdrop of Norse fire, it feels like anything's justified to fight it. But the comic really does push that idea far. It asks hard questions about the morality of rebellion. When things have degraded this much, can you shake the public awake in any way other than with violence? Is anything out of bounds? Do you have to use any means necessary? It treats the question seriously. He can't let the dream die to protect Evie's delicacy, but also, can we really stand behind him as he physically and psychologically tortures a teenage girl who trusts him more than anything? Their story is not one of romance. It's one of radicalization. And it's also the most important part of V's worldview. There are no leaders, only the idea. So making sure there's someone to carry it on is the most important thing besides the revolution itself. When V dies at the end of the book, Evie wonders how to fulfill his last request, to find out who he really is without removing his mask. She knows that would remove a vital piece of him, until, in this beautifully clear panel, she realizes that V does not exist as a human being, that he's nobody, and can hopefully be everybody. She dons his mask and costume to show off to the public, confirming to them that he can't die and showing us that these ideas have extended beyond him, that they can't be stopped. A fascist state can easily kill a person, but it's much harder to kill a shared symbol. That's the real significance of the costume. In the book's final moments, Evie takes in another person, Detective Dominic Stone, so that the lessons can be passed on and the rebellion continues. This part of the revolution was about tearing down tyranny, but it's not over. After our time with this story ends, they'll have to figure out how to rebuild. Now, the movie is something that I enjoyed a lot more before I read the original. It's a pretty entertaining Hollywood action movie, and it's not an outright bad film the way that some Alan Moore adaptations are. Taken on its own, it's fun, and I get why people like it. But having rewatched it right after reading it, it's so safe and empty in comparison. All the most interesting and unique bits are gone. The movie's political target changes from Margaret Thatcher to George Bush.
Immigrants, Muslims, homosexuals, terrorists, disease-ridden degenerates.
Which is okay. It was made in a different political era, so I'm not going to harp on that. I didn't mention the Thatcherism in the original. I mean, it's a big part of it, but it's an adaptation, and I'm sure they could have made it work. Both are criticizing conservative institutional overreach and bigotry. But I don't think the difference in era explains why the world is so much happier and brighter. Why it feels less morally complicated. Lloyd's darkness is replaced by an abundance of color, by a world that doesn't look all that harrowing to participate in. It feels much closer to our reality. And despite still being a dystopian dictatorship, it's a more stable and recognizable place. This is interesting in a way. You can charitably read it as a more direct commentary on us and how we treat our own world as normal. But I think that there was just a lot less thought put into this world. It doesn't have much political maturity, and it's missing that zone of interest feeling. The death camps are recast as part of a secret conspiracy, an attempt to build a bioweapon that the public is genuinely misled about.
Eventually, his party launches a special project in the name of national security. At first, it's believed to be a search for biological weapons, and it's pursued without regard to its cost.
Get it? Like lying about WMDs? I really dislike this edition. Beyond dating the movie, it just makes it less collectively harrowing. Like they're just trying to blame those in power instead of taking responsibility.
What if someone else unleashed that virus? What if someone else killed all those people? Would you really want to know who it was, even if it was someone working for this government?
The people of the comic knew their neighbors were disappearing. The wrong types of people were cleansed, and everyone looked the other way. They may not have known where they went, but they knew what happened, and they knew exactly why. The movie doesn't dwell on that sort of thing. All the side plots showcasing the pathetic politicking and clumsy bureaucracy that make up a fascist dictatorship are cut. They're replaced with a few supervillains that are singularly responsible for depressing a good society.
He is a man seemingly without a conscience, for whom the ends always justify the means.
There was a comic subplot about a woman named Rose, which showcased her descent from the widow of an influential party member into essentially a stripper. It showed the capitalistic desperation the state forces on its citizens to help keep them in line, which isn't here. Evie goes from an orphan teenage sex worker to a capable PA in her 20s. Her life seems pretty fine, and she constantly leaves V's hideout of her own volition to go back to it.
I think I should go.
May I ask where?
Home. I have to go home. I'm sorry. I had to.
Evie!
I'm leaving.
The paralyzing fear that keeps the citizens compliant. The general, everyday horror. It doesn't feel visceral. People are more tricked and blinded than genuinely weak and immoral themselves. The movie flirts with that idea, mainly with the character of Gordon, who voices shame at his own cowardice.
The truth is, after so many years, you begin to lose more than just your appetite. You wear a mask for so long, you forget who you were beneath it.
But its central thesis surrounds a suppressed moral fiber. It's not warped, it's asleep. And so the societal awakening is idealistic, convenient, and fake. Because everything feels stable, it doesn't feel ripe for revolution. Comfort stifles rebellion. And these people are just too comfortable. It's a sanitized dystopia that shies away from realism, that only lightly hints at the dark truths of politics. Things instead feel like a good versus evil action film. The movie's view of the public is also much more limp and lenient. When V appears on TV in the comic, he speaks directly to them in one of the most powerful and angry moments of the text. He specifically calls them out and threatens them in this passage that I'm going to read, even though it's pretty long. We've had a string of embezzlers, frauds, liars, and lunatics making a string of catastrophic decisions. This is plain fact. But who elected them? It was you. You who appointed these people. You who gave them the power to make your decisions for you. While I'll admit that anyone can make a mistake once, to go on making the same lethal errors century after century seems to me nothing short of deliberate. You have encouraged these malicious incompetents who've made your working life a shambles. You have accepted without question their senseless orders. You have allowed them to fill your workspaces with dangerous and unproven machines. You could have stopped them. All you had to say was no. You have no spine. You have no pride. You are no longer an asset to the company. I will, however, be generous. You will be granted 2 years to show me some improvement in your work. If, at the end of that time, you are still unwilling to make a go of it, you're fired. It's scathing, hateful, and dismissive of any argument that paints a public docile to fascism as anything but participants. This isn't a one-off problem. Our leadership comes from somewhere. There's something rotten in us that can't just keep being forgiven. When Movie V gives his speech, he seems to be going in exactly that direction.
How did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, certainly there are those who are more responsible than others, and they will be held accountable. But again, truth be told, if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror.
But then he pivots, portraying the public as fearful lambs led astray by the big bad villains.
I know why you did it. I know you were afraid. Who wouldn't be? War, terror, disease. There were a myriad of problems which conspired to corrupt your reason and rob you of your common sense.
Are they culpable? Sure, but only because they're being tricked by a villainous conspiracy, by a single, evil, charismatic man.
Fear got the best of you, and in your panic you turned to the now High Chancellor Adam Sutler.
And a rousing, bombastic call to arms by a charming, heroic rogue is all it's going to take to rally an entire country to forget their fear and stand up to their brutal government. They just needed a different charming guy.
But if you see what I see, if you feel as I feel, and if you would seek as I seek, then I ask you to stand beside me 1 year from tonight, and together we shall give them a 5th of November that shall never, ever be forgot.
They're recast as heroes. And even in that call to arms, there's no placement of freedom above liberty. Nothing challenging the political system itself. No denigration of the concept of justice. Anarchy as a political concept has been removed. The rallying cry and some masks sent in the mail are enough to inspire everyone. And overthrowing their corrupt leadership will apparently fix everything. This is a story about a worldview you already believe in. A rebellion kept firmly inside the box. About the romance of liberty and just finding the right man to lead you, to remind you of the inherent goodness of the people. There's no rage at the social choice a fascist society has made. It's the exact opposite, a pity at what was done to you. We gotta talk about the character of V here, because despite looking the part, his character is drastically, disappointingly neutered. The terroristic, extreme anarchist becomes a superhero. He's not an idea. His rebellion is not all that he is. He's firmly and constantly referred to as a man, from the very first scene.
And it is not an idea that I miss. It is a man. A man that made me remember the 5th of November. A man that I will never forget.
The movie acts like he's supposed to match up with his comic counterpart. It pulls scenes like this one directly out of the text.
Beneath this mask there is an idea, Mr. Creedy. And ideas are bulletproof.
But it comes off a lot cheesier because the movie doesn't really believe it. It knows what the comic was saying and pretends to be committed to that, but compromises on it wherever possible. The difficulty of the original character reflects the difficulty of genuinely effective resistance, but he's made likable and gallant. The experimental honesty of his terroristic portrayal is domesticated into basic valor to make sure we have a clear protagonist. His arc in the movie is specifically about how he's humanized and comes to see himself as a monster who's lost touch with humanity.
It's a basic principle of the universe that every action will create an equal and opposing reaction.
Is that how you see it? Like an equation?
What was done to me was monstrous.
Whose obsession with being an idea is somewhat tragic.
And they created a monster.
That's entirely at odds with the V of the comic, a stoic, ghostly presence that's unflinchingly committed to his status as the embodiment of anarchy. His theatrical flair originally reflected a serious commitment to a history and art banned by the regime, and a deep sadness for the cultures and peoples that have been erased. He's the personification of the opposition. It's not about his own joy, but about individualism and creativity as the enemy of the authoritarian. Here, this stuff is much more cartoonish and goofy, intended to make him feel like our safe, eccentric, roguish hero. His entire vibe and worldview now come from his favorite movie, The Count of Monte Cristo. The swashbuckling, the eloquence. He's an excitable fanboy who's trying to be like his favorite character.
My favorite film, The Count of Monte Cristo. Gets me every time.
He and his uncomfortable political will are sanitized into a more palatable form, just like fascism is, to make sure no genuinely difficult questions are posed to the audience, and that they're just having fun. The movie thinks you're too shallow and stupid for something new or interesting. Just give him a superhero. Comic Evie is completely alone, barely able to stay alive in Northfire, a perfect example of her society's casual hostility to its average people, and the perfect clay for V to mold. Here, she's a capable, mentally healthy, and intelligent woman who convinces V that he's an abnormal weirdo.
It made me feel sorry for Mercedes.
Why?
Because he cared more about revenge than he did about her.
His relationship with her in the original is purely one of political paternalism, but here, it becomes an actual romance. They fall in love, and he seems to consider abandoning his mission to be with her.
I can't.
Even this impulse betrays the extremity of fascism, the necessity of his terrorism, and the freedom he claims to fight for. This V isn't uncompromising, he's lonely and cute. If someone had just given him a little kiss, he may never have done any of this.
If I had one wish, I would wish to see you again, if only once, before the 5th.
The movie even paints Evie as clearly right to resist his murderous ways. If anything, he comes around closer to her way of thinking as the movie continues.
You made me understand that I was wrong, that the choice to pull this lever is not mine to make.
He cries over her. And his last words are about their love.
For 20 years, I sought only this day. Nothing else existed. Until I saw you. And everything changed. I fell in love with you, Evie.
In his last moments, his politics and philosophy are an afterthought. This makes the scenes where he tortures her strange, as in the original, he does it to weed out her opposition to his methods. V is a strict, cruel teacher, unsympathetic and borderline insane, so the depths of the torture make narrative sense. He's purposely brainwashing her. It lasts for months, and she's deconstructed in order to be rebuilt as his successor for the good of the mission. An act of cold, distant political love that's inseparable from his ideology. In the film, it's portrayed as an act of personal love for her as an individual, an act that he hated doing, but had to do because he could see she needed it.
But nor will you ever understand how hard it was for me to do what I did. Every day I wanted to end it, but each time you refused to give in. I knew I couldn't.
Instead of being a zealot recruiting a disciple, he's falling for and empowering her beauty and strength.
Yes, I created a lie, but because you believed it, you found something
true about yourself.
Which gives their subsequent love story this weird, abusive Stockholm Syndrome angle that doesn't seem intentional. I mean, I know why this portion is here. It's an iconic moment from the source material where the romantic relationship didn't exist. The film tries to soften the harrowing original scene to fit its softer V, but it's impossible to sand down the abusive horror, and the attempt just highlights how it doesn't fit. Originally, this all ties into V's anarchism. The revolution of anarchy has two modes. It destroys and rebuilds. In a similar way, he hollows out Evie so that she can be reborn as an anarchist in his mold. And his philosophical opposition to authority creates his justification for abusing her. He's breaking his own status as a good authority figure through the abuse. It's monstrous, and that's the point. He's purposely squeezing happiness and comfort out of her. It's truthful about what it means for him to believe in anarchy and shows how morally difficult that can be. Without all that narrative and philosophical purpose, the abuse feels less textually necessary, which makes it even weirder that it's been recast as part of a hero's journey. And rather than just understand it, the movie clearly wants us to forgive V for it as we're pushed to buy into their romance.
I suppose I should thank you.
I still found Valerie's letter highlighting the importance of integrity powerful. All this stuff is basically unchanged. It's the surrounding context that alters it. The reasons this is happening and the lessons Evie learns are skewed. It's a common problem the movie has. It's an adaptation, so it cuts a lot, and that's fine, but it always works to neuter the things it keeps. Is the fascism here? At the top, kinda, but now it's about hero citizens versus villain government. Does V call himself an idea? Yes, but also he's now a sad, lonely little guy. Is his symbol still modeled after the anarchy symbol? Yeah, but now political anarchy isn't in the story. Is the torture here? Yeah, but now it's empowering, and it makes them kiss and fall in love later. And I actually have one more thing I have to say about this scene. And it's a nitpick, I know it is, but a section from Valerie's letter is removed. In 1992, after the takeover, they started rounding up the gays. They took Ruth while she was out looking for food. Why are they so frightened of us? They burned her with cigarette ends and made her give them my name. She signed a statement saying I'd seduced her. I didn't blame her. God, I loved her. I didn't blame her. But she did. She killed herself in her cell. She couldn't live with betraying me, with giving up that last inch. Oh, Ruth. This section's pretty important. It circles the point about integrity back to the imprisonment. To be truly free of the power the authoritarian has over you, you have to be willing to die for that last inch. And by signing that false statement, Ruth wasn't. The movie letter still ends with the integrity thesis, so Evie's own refusal to sign her confession still reads fine. It doesn't ruin it. But I can't help but wonder why this portion was cut. Even a minor change like this just continues to pull the reality out of the fascism. Even in a tragic, genocidal, powerful scene like this one, the intensity is turned down. And complicity, even understandable complicity, is exercised.
They took Ruth while she was out buying food. I've never cried so hard in my life. It wasn't long till they came for me.
The state in the comic collapses due to the chaotic riots of the public after the mass surveillance system is taken down. It shows how brittle a fascist government that has no ideology but fear and control is. And as the book ends, society's in ruins, and the riots haven't stopped. The movie has riots too, but they're spurred by the public following V's example to fight injustice, and they're exacerbated by some police brutality. It's a moral protest against a bad government. The riots are when Comic V makes explicitly clear the distinction between anarchy and chaos. The movie has a scene during its own riots that so clearly rebukes that specific point that it feels intentional, like a rotten Easter egg, a kick in the balls where you only feel the pain in your testicles if you've read the original.
Give me the fucking money!
We're under siege here. The whole city's gone mad.
This is exactly what he wants.
What?
Anarchy in the UK!
Chaos.
While the comic leaves society in chaos, the movie paints V's leadership as itself restoring liberty, implying that's his legacy and his heroic work is done. When he dies, Evie does not take on his mantle as she did in the comic, continuing his work, which shows how his status as an idea endures and how the mission's not over. The torture was supposed to prime her to do that. Instead, all she has to do is pull this lever. Here, the revolutionary work doesn't need continuing because the riots and chaos are over. The public have collectively teamed up to follow V, their new lord and master. They move in lockstep like they're V's personal military, and the fascist military refuses to fire at the unarmed public. It feels like a fantasy. Evie's closing monologue is supposed to show that his ideas have extended into everybody, that the public has already absorbed them and overthrown Sutler with them.
Here's you. And me. Here's all of us.
But this part isn't fleshed out. They clearly follow V specifically. And of course, Evie's final line makes explicitly sure to center us on his humanity before we cut to credits.
No one will ever forget that night and what it meant for this country. But I will never forget the man and what he meant to me.
The explosion the movie ends with symbolizes not the end of a long, broken system of misery and death, but instead the rebirth of the democracy they had before the current guy got elected. It's an ending of stability and hope, one that makes you feel nice, and avoids any moral ambiguity in the character of V or difficulty in knowing what comes next. It's easy. The public did it. All they needed was an inspiring leader. And beyond suffocating the original's politics, I think that that's just such a weak way to sanitize what the book thought about humanity. In a fascist country, the rotten state of society is the collective fault of everyone who lives in it. You voted them in. You passively let them do what they do. Some of you participate willingly. You work for them, form the body they use to fuck you. You may be too scared to fight it, but that doesn't absolve you. And its extremity is eventually going to inspire resistance. Something else is going to rise up that's violent, extreme, political, and right to oppose you. It's not going to be as romantic as you expect, and whether the extremity will be too much is all about perspective. The comic shows you real selfishness, guilt, and terrorism, while the movie doesn't have the respect or clarity to show you anything except a triumphant love story about the inherent goodness of the public when they're appealed to with enough rhetorical flair. The comic makes you feel complicit in the state's banality and horror, reminding you of our collective power that's unused because our goodness is a myth. The movie makes you feel like a revolutionary from the safety of your bed.